Faith is apparently supposed to feel like confidence, like certainty, like standing on solid ground. But for a lot of people, it doesn't. At times, it feels fragile, confusing, exhausting, or even dishonest. And when your faith doesn't feel the way you think it's supposed to, you start to wonder, is something wrong with me? Maybe you've thought, everyone else seems so sure, but I have all these doubts. I say the words when I pray. I know God is who He says He is, but I just don't feel it. Or faith sounds so passive, like I'm supposed to wait around instead of doing something. And underneath all of that is this quiet fear. If my faith doesn't look or feel the way it's supposed to, do I even belong? If that's been your experience, I need you to know you're not broken. Your faith isn't failing, and you're not the odd one out. Today, we're going to talk about what faith actually is, not what you've been told it might feel like, but what it means in plain English, and why your doubts, your questions, your exhaustion don't disqualify you. It's a word that's constantly used in Christian spaces. It's in worship songs, it's in sermons. When you're facing something difficult, well-intentioned people tell you, just have faith. Or worse, for some people, it's actually been weaponized as a vehicle for spiritual bypassing. But here's the problem. Many of us have never been told what faith actually is. We've never been told how it might land in our bodies. And we've therefore often tried our best to fill in the gaps to recognize what it's supposed to feel like. And when our inner experience doesn't match that script, we assume the problem must be us. So you feel guilty for having doubts. You feel fake when you pray because you're not sure you mean it. You're exhausted by the performance of trying to be a good Christian. You wonder if you're lying to yourself. And when people say, have faith in the middle of a crisis, when real decisions need to be made, when suffering just doesn't make sense, it can feel incredibly dismissive. Like you're either being told to do nothing when you want to act, or to bypass how deeply painful suffering and crises are. This isn't because you don't understand faith. It's because faith has been taught as certainty instead of what it actually is. And that's what we need to slow down and make sense of today. Now, one of the most famous verses about faith comes from the book of Hebrews. Let me read it to you. Now, faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see. Confidence in what we hope for, assurance about what we do not see. Now, if you've heard this verse before and thought, okay, but what does that actually mean in real life? You're not alone. Because at first glance, it sounds like faith is about being certain of things you can't prove. Like faith is supposed to eliminate doubt. But that's not what this verse is saying. The writer of Hebrews isn't telling you to conjure up certainty. They're describing what faith does. Faith doesn't remove uncertainty. Faith is what holds you in the uncertainty without collapsing. And to understand that, we need to look at the word itself. In English, we use the word faith in all different kinds of ways. We say, I have faith it's going to work out. Or you've got to have faith in yourself. Sometimes faith means optimism. Sometimes it means belief. Sometimes it just means hope. But in the Greek, the original language of the New Testament, the word is pistis. Again, it's been a hot minute since I was at Bible college, so please forgive my pronunciation. But pistis doesn't mean blind belief. It doesn't mean pretending to know things you don't. Pistis means trust, confidence, and conviction. But here's the key. Pistis is always relational. It's not about believing hard enough in an idea. It's about who you're placing your trust in. Think about it this way. When you trust someone, you don't have certainty about every outcome. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you know who they are. You know their character, and you lean into that relationship even when the path ahead isn't clear. That's pistis. That's faith. It's not the absence of questions. It's not pretending you're sure when you're not. Faith is who you turn to when you don't have all the answers. This changes everything. Because if faith is relational, if it's all about who you're leaning into rather than how strong you feel, then faith isn't something you have to produce. It's something you return to. You don't have to manufacture certainty. You don't have to eliminate all of your doubts. You don't have to feel confident all of the time. Faith is an orientation. It's a direction you turn. When doubt shows up, and it will, faith isn't pretending the doubt isn't there. Faith is saying, I don't know what's next, but I know who I'm asking. When suffering doesn't make sense, faith isn't having all the answers. Faith is saying, this hurts and I don't understand it, but I'm not walking through it alone. When decisions need to be made and you're not sure which way to go, faith isn't passivity. Faith is saying, I'll take the next step and I trust that God is in this with me. That's not weak. That's not fake. That's faith. Now, here's why this feels so hard. Our brains are wired to seek certainty. There's a part of our brain, our amygdala, that threat detector we talked about in our video about grace, that doesn't like ambiguity. When our brains encounter uncertainty, it treats it like danger. And our brain's job is to eliminate that danger as quickly as possible. It wants answers. It wants control. It wants to know. But faith asks us to live in the uncertainty without eliminating it. Faith says we don't have to know. We just have to trust. And your brain hates that. So when faith feels uncomfortable, when it feels like you're free falling, when it feels fragile or unstable, that's not a sign you're doing it wrong. That's your nervous system responding to the unfamiliar experience of trusting without controlling. Here's the thing. Our brains build conviction through evidence. It looks for patterns, outcomes, proof. But faith isn't built on proof. Faith is built on relationship that we can have confidence in. Yet, importantly, relationships don't operate on certainty. They operate on trust. You can't prove someone loves you the way you can prove a math equation, but you can experience it. You can know it relationally. It's not intellectual certainty, it's relational trust. And that kind of trust, that kind that holds us when we can't see clearly, that's what grows over time. Not because we eliminate doubt, but because we keep returning to who we're leaning into. That is, we can have confidence in our relationship with a God who will never leave us, who first loved us, and we can have an assuredness of our security in Him because of all He has already done for us. From this kind of relationship, where we trust in Him, faith flows, not because of anything other than knowing who He is. So I want to be really clear about something. Doubt is not the enemy of faith. Doubt is often the companion of faith. In the Bible, some of the most faithful people were also the most honest about their doubts. Abraham questioned God. Moses pushed back. David cried out, "How long, O Lord?" And perhaps most noted, Thomas, who wanted to see the very scars with his own eyes. And what did Jesus do? He didn't reject Thomas. He invited him to touch his very scars, to answer his doubts and his questions in the way that Thomas needed them to be. Because faith isn't the absence of questions. Faith is conditioned on who you're placing your trust in, who you're asking the questions to. So if you've been carrying guilt for having doubts, I want you to hear this. Your doubts don't disqualify you. Your questions aren't evidence of failure or weakness. Your struggle isn't proof that something's wrong with you. Faith and doubt can coexist because faith isn't about certainty. It's about trust. And trust doesn't mean you never wonder. It means you keep showing up to the relationship even when you're not sure. So here's faith in plain English. Faith is not certainty you produce. It's not confidence you conjure up. It's not the absence of doubt or questions or struggle. Faith is pistis, trust, confidence, conviction in relationship. It's leaning into God when you can't see the whole picture. It's taking the next steps when the path isn't clear. It's returning to who you know, even when you don't know what's next. Hebrews 11 verse 1 says, "Faith is confidence in what we hope for and assurance about what we do not see." Not because you've figured it all out, not because you've eliminated uncertainty, but because you know who you're hoping in. And when you start to understand faith this way, not as something to perform, but as a relationship to return to, something shifts. You stop measuring yourself against other people's certainty. You stop feeling guilty for your doubts. You stop performing confidence you don't feel. And you start trusting that God is present, not just when you're strong, but when you're struggling. Not just when you're sure, but when you're scared. That's faith. And as small as a mustard seed, it's enough. So if this way of understanding faith feels relieving instead of heavy, that's not by accident. This channel exists to explain faith and big ideas in ways that actually make sense, without the shame, without pressure, without the performance. So if you'd like more of this plain English content, I'd love for you to subscribe. And if you know someone who's been carrying guilt for their doubts or exhaustion with their faith, please share this with them. We also have a community that I'll link below if you'd like to explore this more deeply. No pressure. We're here if you need us. Take what you need, come back when you're ready, and I'll see you in the next video.